It's to no surprise that solar weapons this season are phenomenal. Between solar surges or artifact mods, there's a reason why we've talked so highly about Sunshot. But today though, we're gonna be talking about another weapon, an exotic combination that may interest you, and that's Devil's Ruin, a fusion rifle sidearm hybrid with the ability to stun unstoppable champions in its fusion rifle form. Guys, this has always been a very good sidearm, albeit a bit niche. However, when you start combining artifact mods, things get disgusting. We're talking constant ignitions, constant radiance, which by the way, you can easily proc while in its fusion rifle form. And when we combine this with Mechaneer's Tricksleeves, which by the way, just got a rework, then we start to see how nasty this sidearm can truly be. So without further ado, I present to you Devil's Trick. Huh? I know, it's been a while since we did names like this, but we're bringing it back. But first up, let's cover all of our bases. And let's just start with Devil's Ruin real quick. Its exotic intrinsic perk is Close the Gap. Press and release to fire individual shots, that being its sidearm form. Hold to charge up a high-powered, unstoppable stunning laser. Now, some things to note about Close the Gap. As a sidearm, it does what other sidearms do. However, when you actually fire this weapon in its fusion rifle form, not only does it disperse 15 rounds, pretty much all at once, as a fusion rifle shot that can land crits, but simultaneously, that damage is actually slightly higher per crit than its sidearm form. We're talking 22.8% higher, just for using it in its fusion rifle form. Now, its trait is Pyrogenesis. Fully charging the laser refills the magazine from reserves. Now, this trait is not what you think it is. Essentially, what this means is that if you're using Devil's Ruin in its sidearm form and you have one shot left in the mag, if you charge at that very moment, it will give you a full 15-round fusion rifle burst. So that means you can keep running around using it as a sidearm. And then when you get to that final few shots, do the fusion rifle burst to get some more damage out and then reload. Now, let's talk Mechaneer's Tricksleeves. This was arguably one of the worst exotics in the game. Now, it always gave us that 100% buff when you were in critical health and you would swap to a sidearm. The problem is, the moment you dipped out of red, that 100% damage buff to your sidearms went away. But with update 7.3.0, Bungie made these changes to Mechaneer's Tricksleeves. Number 1, the sidearm damage bonus now persists for 5 seconds after your shields begins to recharge. Number 2, sidearm kills extend the damage bonus duration by 3 seconds and completely reloads your sidearms from reserves. And number 3, this is actually a PvP thing. The damage bonus has been reduced in PvP to compensate for it lasting longer. It's now 10% instead of 35%. Keep in mind, guys, it's still 100% inside of PvE. Now, I want to really focus on that second point. Sidearm kills extends the damage bonus duration by 3 seconds and completely reloads your sidearm from reserves. So guys, when you reach critical health, and that's whether or not you take damage from an enemy or you stand in a pool of icky, anything that isn't self-damage in some way, as long as you reach that red in your health, Tricksleeves will be ready to be activated. Now, in order to activate it, you need to swap to another weapon and then swap back to your sidearm and then proceed to start getting kills. And again, previously, the moment your shields begin to regenerate, you would lose that buff, but now it persists. As long as you're getting kills, you're adding on 3 seconds to that timer. Now, I know 3 seconds is not much. For most sidearms, it may be a bit of a struggle. However, it's that last statement there that's so intriguing. Sidearm kills extend the damage bonus duration by 3 seconds and completely reload your sidearm from reserves. Guys, that's why you're seeing me shooting fusion rifle shot after fusion rifle shot. As long as I am getting kills and reprocking Tricksleeves, I can lay on the trigger, blowing load after load, over and over, and Tricksleeves will keep auto reloading the weapon. Now, let me just say this before we move on to artifact mods and everything else from our Solar 3.0 fragments and all the different synergies we have here. And by the way, dim link down below. Before we get into that, I do want to mention something about Mechaneer's Tricksleeves. Even in its passive state, it offers so many benefits. We're talking 100 handling, 100 reload speed for your sidearms. This is passive, by the way. So it's not like Mechaneer's Tricksleeves is only benefiting you when you're in critical health. Obviously, the 100% damage buff is what we're trying to achieve, but it's those passive things that really go a long way. Now, what I will say is that 3 seconds is a tight window. Don't get me wrong, Bungie handing out a 100% buff here in damage is really nice. And when we start breaking down damage numbers here at Carl, you can substantially increase your damage. Again, against Carl, we're doing 4,454 damage per crit. Then we have that 22.8% bump in damage to 5,471 damage per crit, but in its fusion rifle form, albeit it's a bit harder to land all crits in this mode. Now, does a pretty hefty amount of damage here in terms of total damage per burst. But when we start stacking on things like Surges, Radiant, Tricksleeves, everything here, guys, a single burst from Devil's Ruin against Carl with Radiant plus Surge times 3 plus Tricksleeves is 250,298 damage. Just to give you a point of perspective here, we talk very highly of Quicksilver Storm or even Revision Zero. And don't get me wrong, those weapons put out some hefty damage, but a little old sidearm here is putting out more damage than those weapons. Granted, you gotta jump through some hoops. This is also a sidearm, so you gotta be relatively close. And I know I've got some people that like to sit in the back of the map with a bow and take 45 minutes to get through a nightfall. Personally though, I like the aggressive playstyle that Tricksleeves offers. However, Bungie, I wish you would make one more rework to Tricksleeves. I wish the timer actually went up 5 seconds instead of 3. I also wish that Tricksleeves can proc while the sidearm is in your hand. It's kind of annoying to me that I have to actually swap to another weapon and swap back to Tricksleeves in order to proc it. It would just be nice that the moment I hit critical health while holding my sidearm, boom, I can immediately proc Tricksleeves and start using it right then and there and immediately start taking advantage of that extra 205% more damage. Don't get me wrong, guys. Based on where Tricksleeves was pre-update 7.3.0, this is so much better. All I'm saying is that I wish we got just a tad bit more. Look, I don't want to come off too greedy, but it would be nice. Now, with that being said, let's talk all of our mods, because this is when Devil's Ruin and Mechaneer's Tricksleeves really start to get nasty. First up, we've got Flint Striker. Rapid solar weapon precision hits and rapid solar weapon final blows grants radiance. Now, what's so beautiful about this, guys, is that you can accomplish this in the sidearm form of Devil's Ruin, but you can also accomplish this in its fusion rifle form. Very easily, I might add. Then we have Kindling Trigger. Radiant causes solar weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. Now keep in mind, there is no intrinsic Scorch application whatsoever with Devil's Ruin, and Kindling Trigger can't reach an ignition on its own. But think of Kindling Trigger as a way of like moving that starting point to reach an ignition up a bit further. The purpose of it here though, guys, is just tacking on some extra damage. Then we have Rays of Precision. While Radiant's solar precision final blows cause combatants to ignite. This is such a good mod. Arguably one of the best mods we have ever had. You've seen it on Sunshot, and it's just as deadly here on Devil's Ruin. And what's so beautiful is that you can actually do this in the fusion rifle form. You get a crit kill while shooting this weapon in its fusion rifle mode, you will proc that ignition. Now, something I want to mention, ignitions that are spawned from Rays of Precision do not benefit from Tricksleeves damage buff. That is one thing that Bungie really tries to avoid, right? They don't want ignition damage to scale. We talked about it with Path of Burning Steps. It's one of the few exotics that will scale ignition damage. But at least from our testing here, guys, Tricksleeves and that 100% damage buff is not applying to that ignition damage, which is unfortunate. An extra 100% of ignition damage, which is already a ton of damage, would be nasty, but that's not the case. Now, other mods we're utilizing is, of course, From Whence You Came, which increases our ability damage to take in and score combatants. Again, this is dependent on what activity you may be in. Torch, which states that while Radiant, you deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strand and Stasis debuffs. I'm actually rocking a Riptide with Chill Clip, and I'll apply that debuff if necessary, and then swap over to Devil's Ruin with Radiant, Surges, and other things being procced, and then have Torch there, also increasing my damage. Now, the easiest way to apply debuffs, especially in Nightfalls, is Revitalizing Blasts. Causing damage with a solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. Now, I'm taking advantage of Knife Trick, and what's so beautiful here is in a single knife, I'm applying a debuff with Revitalizing Blasts. I am also proccing Ember of Torches if I don't already have Radiant procced, which states that my power and melee attacks against combatants makes you and nearby allies radiant. So boom, one melee, I've got a debuff and a buff applied, and you see all the artifact mods here that are benefiting me when I am radiant. Now, some other fragments that I'm taking advantage of is Ember of Empyrean, one of the best fragments for people rocking solar weapons. Solar weapons or ability final blows extends the duration of restoration and radiant effects applying to you. This is how we're able to keep radiant going for so long, regardless of the kills we're getting, whether it's precision kills or body shot kills. Then we have Ember of Solace, where radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration, which is why I'm rocking a healing grenade here, guys. Yes, it kind of works against Mechaneer's Tricksleeves, but at the same time, I normally save it for the moment I reach critical health. I proc Tricksleeves, and then I throw a healing grenade down to get my health back up. That way I don't get shredded while I'm running around with this 100% buff. Now, the aspects that I'm taking advantage of are things like Knock 'em Down and On Your Mark. Granted, mess around with whatever you want to use, guys. I do this for my Blade Barrage on Knock 'em Down, and then On Your Mark is really beneficial for your allies. As the other fragments that I was using were things like Ember of Tempering, where solar weapon final blows grant you and your allies increased recovery for a short duration. Also, your solar weapon final blows create a fire sprite. This is which is a really good fragment. And I actually love it with Ember of Mercy. The problem is that when you pick up a fire sprite with Mercy, which grants you restoration, and will actually start that chain over again, it will reset your timer back down to 3 seconds. So if you have like 10 seconds of restoration, you pick up a fire sprite and you have Ember of Mercy on, it will reset back down to 3 seconds, which is really annoying. This actually will hurt you and get you killed, which happened to me multiple times in my solo run for the dungeon. Luckily for us, Bungie has acknowledged this. They put out a tweet and stated that in a mid-season patch, they will be addressing restoration overall. Granted, I'm not really sure what that all means. Sounds good, could also be a nerf. You never really know. Regardless though, guys, I was very impressed with Devil's Ruin and Mechaneer's Tricksleeves. It was hanging pretty well in GMs. Yes, I did get pooped on, primarily when I was trying to go out of my way and putting myself in risky environments to proc Mechaneer's Tricksleeves, which is a risky play, especially in a GM. But in things like Coil, I think this is definitely a build you can use. And even in GMs, if you've got a strong team with you, I think you can definitely use it there too. This is definitely a build though that keeps you on your toes. And I was enjoying using it. I felt like I was being challenged. I felt like I was adopting a new playstyle that I haven't used in a very long time. Like, when was the last time you mained a sidearm in a Grandmaster? Now just imagine if Bungie actually increases that duration for Mechaneer's Tricksleeves. It'll be amazing. So guys, that is our breakdown for Devil's Trick. Let me know in the comments below what you think. We'll have more builds to come, and yes, I know we've already made nothing but 100 builds, but we've got a new one heading your way very soon. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.